Well, hello. Long time no see, everyone. It's good to be back. I've missed you. I have missed doing this. Sorry, my microphone's always squeaky when I move the arm that holds it. I hope it's on. I know sometimes I come on and I'm talking and to find out you guys can't even hear me. So let me know you can hear me. But I am back. Thank you guys so much. You were so super sweet. You were patient, and the stuff you guys said in your messages was so sweet and so amazing. And I really needed it. It was very helpful. It's been a little rough, but I thought I'm gonna try and do this live, and the only way I can do it is by not really getting into the details of any of it. Anyway, because if I start like I told someone earlier today, if I start feeling something, then I feel everything. So I'm not gonna dive too deep in that, just to say I'm very happy to be back with you all. And tonight we're going back into one of the many arms of the lively Wayfarer. Hey, Bruce the Moose, how are you? Can you guys let me know if my mic is working? Can somebody let me know so I don't spend 20 minutes the first 20 minutes of the video just Hey, Christina, can you hear me? Okay, good. All right, sound is good. All right. I've done it so many times and I was afraid. I don't know why it doesn't work sometimes, but I'm glad it's working now. So, as I said, we're jumping back into one of the many arms of the Lively Wayfarer case. And this is a story that I've covered a couple of times, and it's about James Vituscka. He was a Daily Mail reporter who ended up right smack in the middle of this. And he is accused of flip-flopping, and I have to say I flip-flopped because when he first appeared, I thought he was the devil, like a lot of other people did, and with time and reading a little bit more and hearing a little bit more of his story as it played out, hey, Gelth, I felt like I had it all wrong, and so I actually did a video to apologize for my angry take on it. But I do understand that a lot of people still have questions or maybe still think he might be the devil, and others have come around and sorted out he might be a victim, just like Justin and Jamie were. So however you fall on that, I completely respect your opinions. I hope that you'll just hear the whole thing out as we go through his lawsuit. We're going to do it in chronological order. And one of the things that I want to say is that I've heard a lot of people say that he has inconsistencies or has a flip-flopper and stuff like that. So what I would really like in all honesty is, if you feel that way, if you could let me know in comments, not so much during the chat, because as you guys know, I've got the attention span of a hamster. So if I look at the comments too much, I'm going to drift away. So if you could leave it in comments later on the actual video, if you feel like there have been inconsistencies or flip-flopping, if you could let me know specifically what those are, then maybe like together we can look at that and sort out whether or not there are inconsistencies, or if maybe the way he was perceived or portrayed was inconsistent. Like if we could work through that. Honestly, I want to know, because I appreciate we all see things in our own way, but if he has been portrayed wrongly, and we might have an opinion that's not, and it could be my opinion that's not accurate. We can work through what those inconsistencies have been perceived to be, and try to sort them out, because I would love to know. I would love to know every detail about this case. Even though it's over, I feel like a lot of stuff was never fully resolved. But anyway, I've babbled a little bit too long. I'm a little bit out of practice. Let's go ahead and get started with this. So I'm sure I'm late to the party. I'm sure you guys have all seen his lawsuit by now. Um, and heard lots of really good takes on it. I did listen to one. Normally, I don't listen to anyone until I have actually done my own, at least written my own episode about it. But this time I knew it was going to be a while. So I went ahead and listened to Little Girl Attorney, one of my absolute favorites. And I thought she did a pretty fair take. So I was happy to see that. So this involves the Daily Mail. And I know this is a source of conflict for a lot of people too, because we did appreciate that the Daily Mail was one of the only media sources that would even attempt to report fairly as far as from the Wayfarer point of view. And they actually covered my story personally when I was subpoenaed, and my response to that. Josh had reached out and got my input, and he did a beautiful cover and really shared my opinion. He is no longer with the Daily Mail. He has moved on to, I believe it's CBS, and which congratulations again, Josh. But actually my bio, I think on my Instagram, is from what he called me, the plucky small time YouTuber. So I appreciate that. But at the same time, I try to be fair and look at the facts and see we all make mistakes. We're all capable of doing crappy things to each other. So I try to keep that in mind as well as I go through this. So the Daily Mail originally was a UK-based news outlet, and it started in the 1800s. It's been around for a very, very long time. It did come over into the US. Let's see, it expanded with the New York headquarters in February 2012. I think it started in 2010 with digital news here in the States. But it has grown really, really well, and it is in the top 10 of news websites in the world, which is pretty impressive. And in English, or that is English language websites, that is. And if you look, it's kind of interesting. Look at how many of the news agencies have actually gone backwards in percentage. They're running with less views than normal. But the Daily Mail was one that stayed. It didn't gain, but it didn't lose when everyone else, except for the BBC, lost, including the New York Times. And we love to see that for them, don't we? But they are still at number 2. But it's kind of impressive that that an agency that came into the United States such a short time ago is really not that far away from the New York Times. So I thought that was an interesting thing to share. And then, of course, the plaintiff in the case is James Vituscka. So who is James Vituscka? If you haven't been around and maybe missed all of the drama earlier, you could, I always tell you that I'm going to put a link in comments, and then I always forget to do it. I will try to remember to put a link to the last video that I did where I went through it, his story a little bit, what we knew then, and we know a lot more now thanks to this lawsuit. But from way back, he went to university in Hawaii, which is really exciting. And he worked on a newspaper, and I forgot to write the newspaper's name on here, but his first celebrity interview was with Elvira. And I should have put a picture of her in case you guys don't remember her. She's from kind of ways back. What did she go by? The Mistress of the Night or something like that. She kind of Bride of Frankenstein style sort of look, hair teased up, heavy eyeliner. But he interviewed her way back when he was in college working on a paper. And from there, he ended up working for Entertainment Tonight. He started off as a production assistant. He became personal assistant to Mary Hart and eventually made it to the news desk. Mistress of the Dark, yes. Thanks for confirming that, Bruce. And, very sexy big boobs, somebody says. So you guys remember, I'm not the only one that remembers who she was. Um, he ended up making it to the news desk, and I think he worked there for something like 5 years. He moved on to Us Weekly, where he started to interview A-listers, and he attended some red carpet events. You'll see some of them pictured here, the big time stuff, like the Oscars, SAG Awards, Golden Globe Awards, MTV Awards, things like that. And you see him with some of the celebrities that he got a chance to talk to during that time. And he then ended up on TV on something called Holly Scoop, where he was a host on a panel and moved on from there to American Media, where he became a senior reporter and reported for Radar Online and I think the Inquirer too. From there, he went to TMZ, but that didn't last long. He did not care much for Harvey and or how things went there. And then COVID hit. He ended up going back to school for his master's degree, and then he worked for Progress Humanity, where he was an advisor, and then ended up at the Daily Mail. What's interesting is that the Daily Mail actually headhunted him. He didn't apply for that job. They reached out to him and welcomed him onto their team. And he did really, really well there. He was one of the most viewed. He got lots and lots of clicks. He drummed up a lot of um, views for Daily Mail when he was there. He had really good contacts with the right people and was actually a very, very successful senior reporter there before all of this happened. So, what happened? Oh, I got a little ahead of myself there. Hey, Julianne. So, while he was working there, one of the contacts that he had was Leslie Sloan, who, as we know, is PR for Blake Lively and a big part of how this mess happened in the first place. So we're going to go back because I said we'll do this in chronological order. I'm a big fan of chronological order. It's the best way I can put pieces together. So I haven't followed the lawsuit so much at this portion because it kind of did jump around in time and I'll get lost if I do that. So I made my own notes for these parts. We're going to go back to August 2024, which, as we know, is when everything really went poorly. Well, it was going poorly for Wayfarer before that, several months before that, but no one knew about it until August, when we started to see criticisms against Blake. And it was things about what she was wearing, and mostly it was about the way that she was promoting the movie. People felt like it was all wrong when you're trying to promote a movie about such a serious topic as domestic violence. People noticed that she was promoting her hair care brand. They noticed that she was promoting her booze brand. They noticed that when she was asked questions about it, she avoided the topic or was very sarcastic, and it did not go over very well. Well, a lot of people say she has narcissistic tendencies, what did I say? Narcissistic tendencies. And I'm not medically diagnosing anybody, but if you're talking about it from the standpoint of the way we notice characteristics about people's personality and say, oh, what a narcissist. Yeah. But when you're talking about people like that, they're not able to accept any kind of criticism. They have to blame somebody else. And so this is what happened. And we know that Ryan And Blake tried to force Justin and Jamie to take the blame for the criticism, which they wouldn't do. And that's when things went wild. It's also the time when Jennifer Abel put in her notice and was leaving Stephanie Jones, which apparently you're not allowed to nicely do. And so Stephanie Jones, 2 days before Jennifer was to leave the company, corners her, takes her phone, finds these messages, immediately sends them to Blake, and it's Blake's happy day to have someone to blame. And it all just goes sour from there. But what happens on August 8th is there are whispers that there was some discord on the set. We now know that it was because Leslie Sloan was leaking stuff because she knew something big was about to happen. And so naturally, with James having contacts and a direct contact with Leslie Sloan, where he and she texted very often. If there was a story that Leslie Sloan wanted told, she would contact him. If he had questions about something that he heard, he could contact her. We know that they were messaging and that they were calling each other because we saw all of that in the unsealing. Some of it we even saw before the unsealing, as this was a big part of the story. But Leslie right away sells the story that it's all Justin's fault, that everyone hates him, that he was a misogynist, that he was very controlling. Everything was Justin's fault, is the story that Leslie tried to sell at the time. But we are going to note something most important is what she does not say at that time. What she does not say in August of 2024 is anything about accusations of sexual harassment. So that's a side point we're going to keep in mind as we go through this timeline. Some of the things that we've learned about her along the way is she has a nickname, leave it alone, Leslie Sloan, and that she likes to tell dirty stories on her enemies or her clients' enemies. And of course, tell, well, how do I say, what's the opposite of a dirty story? If there's a dirty story out on one of her clients, she likes to clean that story up, and she doesn't mind, just as she did with putting all the blame on Justin, when actually there was a lot of blame to go against Blake. This is her way. And we've talked about this abundantly about her as a PR person. When you don't have creative ideas, when you don't have good skills, what do? You play dirty. And it looks like, allegedly, don't subpoena me, Leslie Sloan. What she does is these dirty tactics. We never see Blake being guided in some kind of wonderful creative way in PR. We see a lot of fails, in fact, of what Blake posts on her Instagram or other things. So either she's not listening, maybe Leslie Sloan has the best ideas in the world and Blake just doesn't listen, but it seems like there's not very many great creative or good ideas for promoting Blake. And so this is what you end up with: dirty stories on the enemies and cleaning up the dirty stories of your clients. My phone just keeps, let me see if I can silence this real quick. Sorry guys, otherwise it's gonna get really, really annoying. All right, I hope that worked. Okay. All right, let's talk about what's going on at that time. We can see a little bit about the stories that were hitting. One of these is, or both of these are Daily Mail articles. I want you to notice something. We're going to come back to this in a little bit, but if you look at the bottom of the story on the right, it says by N/A. That used to be James. So this was his story back in August of 2024. And then a little bit more of the story comes out a few days later that did finally put some of the things that people were saying about Blake. It did attribute some of the source of the trouble to Blake. But at first, it was Leslie controlling the story. What happens in September? This isn't really covered in his lawsuit, but just as a background, I think we all know this, but just as a reminder, because it's been a while since we all talked about this, the talk by September, it was kind of dying down because no matter how big a Hollywood story is, it doesn't last very long on the front page. And this wasn't some huge story. It was a story that, okay, there was some discord on a movie set, big deal. And it would have all just died down from there if Blake would have let it. But as we know now, she didn't. She was stewing over the messages that she got from Stephanie Jones. And what does she do? She files the Van Zandt sham lawsuit to launder the messages that she already possesses. And so that's how this little bitty story in August of 2024 ends up being the monster that we know that it is today. Now, in October of 2024, because this, like I said, the story had died down, this wasn't some big story that they were all still reporting on. It had come, it had gone. And then we have October, and that is when we see that Blake starts sharing some of her Van Zandt harvest with the New York Times months before the lawsuit's filed, months before the story. Also, is that James receives what's called a meritorious raise. So that means he earned this raise on his merits. He receives that from the editor-in-chief, Katie Davies, and managing editor Richard Ellis. We see him pictured there at the bottom. Keep his name in mind. He comes up again. And they say it's for excellent work and high traffic contributions. So it's a big boost. I mean, look at that. It goes from 100,000 to 122,120. So over $22,000 raise. That's how good of a reporter he was. That's how well he was doing. And that's the reputation that he had in this company. Now, not a whole lot happens until December 6th. And again, this is Richard Ellis, and we know that he is a managing editor. We just read it here. We know that he is a superior of James because he had the share in his race. I'm gonna put your comments away just for a moment while we go through this. So what happens on December 6th, and this is well before things get super bad. We've heard about James being accused of scratching an elevator door. That's part of the story more than just the elevator door. In fact, when we first heard this, we kind of were given the impression that this was something that he did kind of out of spite when he was being accused. I don't know if you guys remember that. Way back when we first heard about him, that's kind of the idea that the way it was expressed. So like I said, I want you to keep in mind what things you think were inconsistencies and what things might have just been things that the way they were portrayed to us. So he was portrayed as this guy who makes this big mess, and then he's angry because he's getting fired, and so he does damage to company property. But if you look at the dates, this is December 6th. This is before any of that happened. So we do see he was accused of scratching the elevator door. I do not know the details of how this door got scratched, but he gets summoned to the office of Mr. Ellis. And the repairs for this elevator door, it's reported to him that it was going to cost $2,350. Well, James denies this. He's like, I didn't do it. And says, as proof, let's review the security camera footage. Because as you know, elevators usually have security cameras in them. But it's not something that Mr. Ellis chose to do, which is kind of strange. It could have all been settled right then and there. But later that day, they talk about it again in a Slack message. And Mr. Ellis tells him then there is insufficient evidence to blame him. And he says, as your judge, jury, and executioner, I rule that the evidence is not clear beyond reasonable doubt. So let's put this all behind us and get on with our lives, which sounds like a reasonably friendly message. It doesn't sound like James was in any kind of trouble. Just, it's going to be done. He's like, let's forget about it, right? Where does it go from there? Later that same evening, there's a holiday party, and Christmas parties have a reputation about crazy things happening. People maybe having a little too much to drink. I don't know if that's the case here, or just cutting loose and doing things they wouldn't normally do. So at this party, shortly after James arrives, Richard Ellis approaches him. And the allegations here are that he looked him up and down and stated in a seductive and flirtatious manner. And just to explain this, James is an openly gay man. So we can understand a little bit better how this would happen, that he would feel that someone might do this, okay? So James takes this remark to be sexually suggestive. I think all of us women out there can relate to a situation like this. We know when we're being looked up and down. We know when something is being said to us in a seductive and flirtatious manner, and that's what James felt was happening here, and that's what he alleges here in his lawsuit. Don't subpoena me, Richard Ellis. He stood silently and refused to engage, fearing retaliation if he confronted his superior, his managing editor. Now, one of the things that I absolutely love, and I want to say this, and I'll probably repeat it again later, if any of you find yourselves in an uncomfortable work environment, or any environment for that matter, that's uncomfortable, that you have fear that something is not quite right, think about James Vituscka, because this man, it's almost like he saw the future. He documented things so very well. He also did a really good job about documenting who could be possible future witnesses and letting his feelings known to other people very, very well. This is really, really important. We've talked about this situation before. It's called contemporaneous evidence. So this is something that if you it can overcome hearsay, it can overcome a lot of stuff, and it can really help you out later when you don't have recorded video of something. You can use the people that you spoke to at the time, especially if you put it in writing at the time and documented it well, to help your story stand up better in court later. And so this is one of those occasions. So we have a person named here who he says is a witness to the situation, and that is executive editor Emma Powell. He says that she noticed his discomfort, and she obviously witnessed it and felt for him, because he says that she intervened and pulled him away under the pretense of taking group photographs. So this could be very, very helpful. We have a possible witness right here that saw these these allegations of sexual harassment on that date. Nevertheless, following plaintiff's rejection of Mr. Ellis's sexual advance, Mr. Ellis' treatment of plaintiff changed markedly. And it says from then on, there was a sustained pattern of hostility towards James that culminates ultimately in James's termination. So let's see what happens between December 6th and of 2024 and where we are today. And that date is going to be important as well. December is a very big month. Not only did that happen at the beginning of the month, but as we know very well these dates, December 20th is when Blake filed her CRD complaint. December 21st is when the New York Times article drops. And then December 22nd, James, after seeing this article, he reaches out to Melissa Nathan. It's kind of sad. They were friends, or at least he thought they were friends. We've kind of seen how Melissa operates a little bit before the unsealing, a lot after the unsealing, with her, Katie Case, Brianna Kozlow, kind of coming across, not kind of. I know my perception of them changed a lot after I saw their messages, the way they bashed Jennifer Abel, the way they seemed to sit around and kind of just put everybody that they knew down. Not super nice people. And it's funny that us pro Wayfarer people constantly get accused of supporting Melissa Nathan and Jed Wallace and this and that. And it's funny when I saw Melissa saying some of the stuff that she said, I was like, well, she's not so nice, is she? I don't have trouble. It's not like I look at this and be like, okay, these people are absolute angels. The whole group of them are perfect and they've never said a bad word about anybody else and they've never made a single mistake. I'm not like that. I saw her messages and I'm like, okay, she's not super nice after all. But anyway, James reaches out to her. He sees the predicament she's in because she gets a lot of heat from this article as well. She's part of this lawsuit. She gets blamed yes, exactly. Let me put you guys messages back up. Yes, exactly. She gave Mean Girl mob ick. She really did. Like after I saw her messages, I was like, I'm not defending her anymore. I don't think she's the devil, but she's certainly not the nicest person. And I don't think she did what Blake accused her of doing by any means. Blake's criticism, Blake brought on Blake. But anyway, so all of this is happening at this time, and he reaches out to her as a friend, and he's like, what can I do to help you? As a friend. So keep in mind, there's the situation where he's writing to her as a friend, not as saying, here, put this in the lawsuit. We'll get to that in a moment. But he reaches out to her to try to help her out. And he's like, hey, I've got texts with Leslie Sloan. I'll do what I can to help you out of this mess. It was a friend reaching out to a friend. Okay. And we see, let me move your comments for a second again. So this is him explaining to Melissa what Leslie told him back in August. And she said the whole cast that's supposed to be hates Justin. This has nothing to do with Blake. And now she's saying that Blake was sexually assaulted. So this is the line that ends up being completely misinterpreted. So what this was, as he's explained many times since then, and as we see in the rest of the conversation that was kind of known at the time, he let this word slip. He said assaulted instead of harassed. So this wasn't him saying, oh, Blake said that he assaulted her. That wasn't the context of these messages. What he's saying at this time is that back in August, when Leslie told me that there were problems, Leslie never mentioned anything about sexual harassment. what she said to me in August was that the whole cast hated him, that kind of stuff. So this was the whole context of this message, and this has been known now for months. Several of us have talked about it, that this was not him making something up. It was a misplaced word, and it was him saying, she's saying all this now, all these months later. She never said this way back in August. And she knows she's full of it. She told me that the whole issue was that everybody hates Justin, nothing about Blake and Justin. She said it has nothing to do with Blake. And he does have the texts, and he's shared them. We've seen them. He does have the texts where Leslie spoke to him. Those ended up being subpoenaed into the lawsuit, but not all of it was all shown at the time. So December 25th, Melissa adds him to a group text that includes Brian Friedman. Now, let me look at my notes, because I've kind of drifted away, and I try to word things carefully so that I don't get things messed up. Which one is this slide? Sorry, guys. 14. All right, I don't have extensive notes here. Okay. Okay. So he's put in this group text. It includes Brian Friedman. We can see it here. Now, here's the part we don't know. We don't know how Melissa Nathan presented these texts to Brian Friedman. And I think this might be an important piece of the puzzle that we're missing, that perhaps this is why Brian Friedman had a different understanding of these texts. So the original conversation was had between James and Melissa, and then Melissa takes it to this group, including Brian Friedman. But bear in mind that she was the one who interpreted this conversation. She was the one who chose which texts would go to the attorney. That's something that I haven't really heard anybody talk about before. That and you see James offering to testify. And so we see that Brian Friedman is under the impression that James has offered whatever help that he can have these texts, he can do whatever. So I feel like this is a piece of the puzzle that we've never gotten to see, how it was all introduced, how it went from a private conversation between Melissa and James to this conversation where he's joined in with the attorney. And I think when we have those missing pieces, we'll understand exactly what happened here. But let me look at these, what it says here again real quick. So like it says, plaintiff's communication with Mr. Friedman occurred in the ordinary course of his reporting on a rapidly developing and highly public controversy. Like investigative reporters covering contentious matters, plaintiff communicated with individuals representing differing perspectives to understand and verify competing accounts. Plaintiff did not anticipate that portions of these communications would later be selectively quoted in litigation while omitting his subsequent clarifying statements. So, like I said, I think this is one of the situations where, is it that he flip-flopped, or was someone else's interpretation of what he said portrayed to us in a different way? Do you know what I'm saying? There's still a lot, and I think we'll get to see, like in discovery, in any unsealings, in further filings of all of this, we're going to get to see a whole lot more, because it looks like James is a very good record keeper. So I think all of the accusations that are, because the way that they're specifically outlined in detail, I feel like this attorney is signaling that there is a lot of evidence to corroborate this story. Not every lawsuit complaint is this detailed and this specific. So I think we're going to see this is all very, very well documented. And I really, really look forward to that. But let me see where I've got my notes here. Yes, I didn't want to get ahead of myself, but this is now, where are we? December 31st. Let's call it D-Day for James, because a lot of stuff happened on this day as well. So there's a California lawsuit that Wayfarer files against the New York Times. We don't see a lot about that one because that one gets pulled and it ends up being blended later into the federal lawsuit in New York. But there was this lawsuit that was filed on December 31st. What else happened that day? That's also the day that Blake files her lawsuit. So it's a big day. Lots of things going on here. And Brian Friedman was representing everybody at this point, even Jed Wallace at that point. Later, Jed Wallace gets his own attorneys, but Brian Friedman was doing a lot at this time, and he was doing it pretty much alone. We know that the team gets much bigger later as more and more attorneys join. But in this very beginning, this was insane. And we have to imagine the condition that the Wayfarer parties were in, that this was sprung on them, and all these accusations, and it was put in the New York Times. It had to have been a crazy time. So yeah, let me put this up. I thought he got paid off by Blake and Stephanie. A lot of people still even now think that. And so that's why I think it's really important to get through all of these details. And I think it's why he really wanted to do this lawsuit. So back to, all right, let me go ahead and go to the next. Oh, wait, let me look. Is there something I wanted to share on here? Okay, yeah, this is where, so it is this lawsuit against the New York Times in the California one. And so his name and his picture and all of that shows up, and so he's panicking. He's like, you got to take this off. Where he doesn't want it to be identifying him, block it out. I'll lose my job. He says, Brian, I gave you that stuff to be helpful, not to be fired. And I never for 1 second thought that my name and pictures would be included in his lawsuit. It must be removed now, or I will contact courts myself. Please confirm when I'm removed. And Brian says, James, we talked about this on the phone with Melissa. You said you did not care if your name was used. I would have been happy to redact it. And he says, this is a clarifying thing here. And I think this is important. I said I would be okay taking this stand. I didn't say that I would be okay having my name and picture used in a lawsuit that was to every media outlet in the world. Now, is that the same thing? I mean, someone could say, well, what's the difference? If you're going to testify, you're going to get drug in it anyway. But think about this. If you testify, so you get subpoenaed, you have a privilege. You can't be fired because you're called to testify. Not only that, you get to speak for yourself. So you're sitting there on the witness stand and you get to tell your story. That is a world of difference from having a text conversation that certain texts get screenshot and put in a lawsuit. I think we would all agree that, but he never, This is the thing. Did he go back to supporting Blake, or was that people's interpretation? He's not suing Wayfarer. He's not suing Wayfarer at all. He was never against Wayfarer. In the beginning, he was there to help Wayfarer. We're going to go through exactly what happened and how Leslie Sloan makes sure that it gets interpreted in a way that makes it seem like he's supporting Blake. So just bear with me. But that's a world of difference. You have to admit, if you get to be the one to sit in that witness stand and tell your story in your own words, or if someone else decides which ones of your text messages get put somewhere, and the way it was presented is completely different than what happens if you're called to testify in a lawsuit. So yeah, it is a different situation with different um, potential ways that it can end up. Okay, so after they had this conversation, then on January 2nd, Brian, well, he tells him on January 1st, we will do a notice of errata and try to redact it. This is BS, though, and they should not treat you like this. This is not your fault or your problem. And the truth is the truth. I will get someone on it today. And so he does. He files this, gets James' name and photo all redacted, gets pages out of the actual lawsuit. I mean, it was a huge lawsuit, so you can't erase once something like that gets out there. Um, but sorry, see, I looked at the chat and my hamster brain, because I do really want to know what you guys are thinking, like where you're standing on this. So we'll do some chatting at the end. So if you have something like you really want to say, or you have a question, please write it down, and we'll talk about it at the end. I would love to answer any question. Squirrel, yes, yes, my squirrel moments. You know how squirrels are out there collecting their nuts or whatever, and all of a sudden you just see them and they seem to like go into a zombie state. 'Cause they hear something far away, or I don't know what happens, but yes, I have those moments when I see your chat, because you guys are so interesting. Um, okay, then we get to this one, and I'm not gonna lie, none of us Wayfarer supporters like this line in point 191. It chafes me every time I read it. Not just the first time, not just the second time. Every time I read it, I don't like it. Because when I care about somebody, when I've grown to like someone, I'm very protective of them. And it it gets am I on the wrong one? Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm on the wrong one. Hold on. Let me do this one first and then I'll get to it. So January 16th, Wayfarer files a counter lawsuit against Blake Lively, and it contains selective quotes from those text messages again. So they've already talked about it. Some of the stuff was redacted, pulled out, but when the new lawsuit is filed, this one is the New York one, that last one was the California one. Some of these texts end up now his name and picture are redacted in this, but the message, the portrayal of the text is still not actually what was being said in that conversation. And when you read the entire conversation, you can see that that's so. He also had posted other things when he was trying to clear his name, trying to say, this is not the conversation that I had, and they all knew it. Because when you read those messages, you can see in the conversation that he has with Melissa that that is not what he was saying. And so it's kind of like you guys knew that this isn't what I meant, but you put it in this again. just without my name and face. Well, by now the world all knows exactly who this Daily Mail reporter was because it was a huge lawsuit. It had already spread. So it was kind of like this guy was going to be screwed because everybody knew who it was, even though his name wasn't there. So, all right, let me get to where is that? Okay, that's a later one. It's a later one. Sorry, guys. I'm lost in my notes again. Okay, so it says here in the lawsuit, by publicly attributing false statements to plaintiff, the litigation thrust plaintiff into the center of a nationally publicized dispute. Those events, in turn, became the basis for defendant Daily Mail's subsequent efforts to control plaintiff's legal representation, dictate the contents of his sworn declaration, and influence how he responded to judicial process. So think about this for a moment, what we know about Leslie Sloan. So Leslie Sloan is an important person for a company like Daily Mail to stay on good terms with. If they want, as I said earlier, James had her on speed dial, basically. If he hears a story about somebody she represents, he could text her, he could call her, she would pick up, she would tell him her side. If there was something she wanted put out, she would do the same back to him and tell him. He would verify it. And so naturally, when it comes to the importance of one reporter and Leslie Sloan, who represents quite a few very, very famous people, who do you think is most important to Daily Mail? It's going to be Leslie Sloan, right? So naturally, as this is getting messier and messier by day, Daily Mail is going to pick a side. And as is alleged here, wants to control James's reaction to the whole thing. And we'll see how that all plays out as we go on to this. Hey, Pam. Okay. So that's why I titled this slide, Leslie Sloan Needs to Save Herself. So we get to April of 2025. And this is his, under this subheading of this allegation, that Daily Mail prevented James from obtaining independent counsel and attempted to control his participation in the Lively Baldoni litigation. Now we can see why they would want to do that, not just to save themselves, but to save their relationship with Leslie Sloan. And if you think about it, we've had his texts interpreted through Melissa Nathan and through Leslie Sloan and through Blake Lively's legal team. We've never really gotten to hear directly from James. Everything we know about what he supposedly did and said has been through the mouths or through the typewriter of somebody else. So we have to keep that in mind. But what happens in April? Ms. Sloan's counsel personally served plaintiff with 2 subpoenas. One for the production of documents, and the second one is they want to depose him. So he's hit with these 2 subpoenas. And I don't know how many of you have been subpoenaed. I was subpoenaed in this lawsuit myself. It was terrifying. You guys know, you heard me on here losing it. You know how we all were. All those of us who spoke on it, 107 of us were subpoenaed. And those of us who spoke on it, you saw what we went through with it. It was terrifying because of the sheer magnitude of this lawsuit. How many millions of people were daily going to that docket to read everything? And so I imagine it doesn't matter that he was a reporter, he's still a human. I imagine that it was even more terrifying for him because he had a whole lot more to lose. And so he gets served with these two things. Now, the Daily Mail is also subpoenaed for documents related to that same litigation. So naturally, they're probably freaking out. That's not good for a news agency to get subpoenaed. They don't want their stuff out there in this humongous lawsuit. Just like how we saw what happened to Sony and so many other people in the great unsealing, their messages got shown to the world. And so it's it's not a nice situation to be in for anybody. So then this to me is the second biggest allegation in this whole complaint. The first one being the whistleblower part, and the second one being this: recognizing that his personal legal interests could diverge from defendant Daily Mail's corporate interests, plaintiff immediately informed defendant Daily Mail's in-house attorney, Beth Lobel, that he intended to retain his own counsel to advise him regarding the individual subpoenas, which was a very, very smart thing to do. Again, if you find yourself in a work environment situation like this, do the same thing. You should always, if possible, have your own counsel because they're looking out for themselves. Number one, you will never be number one. And he recognized that. And so he says to Daily Mail, to their in-house attorney, I want my own counsel. And I cannot believe her reaction. She tells him not to get his own lawyer. Now, I think any HR person would know you don't tell an employee this. But an attorney to tell someone this, she knew better. You better believe this woman knew better than to say this to him. This is absolutely shocking to me that this woman would say that. And she said it would betray the company. And then she also warned him that it's best not to have emails creating a record. So this to me, like I said, this is the second biggest thing here, is that an attorney said this to him. And this gives teeth to this lawsuit, in my opinion. Others might have a different opinion of it, but I feel like this makes his lawsuit very, very strong. That they're in-house, not just anybody, not just the guy who sits next to him, not just even an HR person who doesn't know all the legal ins and outs. This was their in-house attorney, and she said this, and that is very, very shocking. Why is it shocking? This makes up a big part of his lawsuit. So we have the New York labor laws, and we have Section 8, 107-19, interference with his protected right to counsel and his ability to testify pursuant to a subpoena. So 19 is here, interference with protected rights. And so that's what this interference was, his protected right to counsel. I mean, when police arrest you, even in the Miranda rights, they let you know you have a right to counsel. Nobody has a right to interfere with your right to counsel. And she did, allegedly. And his ability to testify pursuant to a subpoena. Okay, so the rest of this, it shall be unlawful, discriminatory practice for any person to coerce, intimidate, threaten, or interfere with, or attempt to coerce, intimidate, threaten, or interfere with any person in the exercise or enjoyment of, or on account of such person having aided or encouraged any other person in the exercise or enjoyment of any right granted or protected pursuant to this section. So she would have known this if she's a good attorney worth her salt in New York. And so saying that to him was a big deal. Okay, what happens from there? Let me check my notes real quick. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, I'll just move on. Okay, and now we can kind of follow this lawsuit. It stays pretty much in chronological order now, so we're gonna go through the complaint itself more now. So, Daily Mail's efforts to prevent plaintiff from retaining independent counsel were not limited to its legal department. Deputy editor Chelsea, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce this, Richel, likewise instructed plaintiff that retaining outside counsel would be a mistake and that he needed to put the company first. So we have their in-house counsel and we have his supervisors, his bosses, putting this pressure on him. And I'm saying it's for Daily Mail's interest. Under this combined pressure, plaintiff did not retain independent counsel and instead relied upon attorneys who prioritized defendant Daily Mail's rights over his. And this reminds me, it's so easy for us on the outside looking in to say, how could you let someone pressure you to do this? But look at this whole case. A lot of this happened because Justin and Jamie weren't able to stand up to Blake's pressure and Ryan's pressure. Not everybody has the strength to do that. And also, it depends on what you have on the line. In the case of Wayfarer, Justin and Jamie, they had been trying to make that movie for 5 years. They just wanted this movie out there. And so much had gone wrong with it. COVID had happened. So many things were happening. And yeah, not everyone has Steve Sorowitz's fortune to back them. So when you feel like you could be in trouble, and Blake had made Wayfarer feel like that. She kept holding things over their heads. She'd made false accusations. A lot of things had happened. He's worried about his job. All of a sudden, it's a scary place, and not everybody is able to stand up for themselves. I know for myself, I'm not very good at standing up for myself. Now, if it's someone I care about, and the more I care about them, the more vicious I can be, I'm a lioness. But because even like with my case, when I first got the subpoena, I was frozen, absolutely frozen. But when I saw the other people who were subpoenaed, when I heard their fears, we ended up in a little chat group. When I heard their fears, when I saw them talking about it on their YouTube channels or their Instagram, and they cried. I remember seeing Kenz's tears. And she had like 1 subscriber on YouTube and she got subpoenaed. It it um it changed everything in me. I was no longer frozen. I sat down and started writing, and I helped everybody that I could. I reached out to people. I told them they could use my filings, and we all helped each other through it all. But if I had been the only one subpoenaed, I don't know what would have happened. I would not have had the strength to fight like I was able to do because I felt like I was fighting for other people. And so yeah, before we look at this and go, "Oh, why didn't he do more? Why didn't he stand up? Why wasn't he?" A lot of people can't do it. We saw it happen, like I said, with Justin and Jamie. Okay, 40. Throughout April 2025, Ms. Lobel repeatedly made statements intended to pressure plaintiff into believing he was personally responsible for defendant Daily Mail's legal expenses and to discourage him from exercising his independent judgment. This is one of those things I was talking about. Throughout April 2025, this is kind of specific. This makes me think that somewhere there is documented evidence that this was happening in April 2025. Because if this was just recall, if this was just he told his attorney, "Oh, they kept pressuring me," I don't think it would be specific to April. It'd just be, "Oh, early on they were saying this." It's hard this far away from something. We're over a year past this to sit there and go, "Oh, yeah, it was this month." Unless you have something documented that you can look at and go, "Yeah, this happened in April 2025." So again, I'm holding out a lot of hope that we're going to get to see more details of exactly what went down here. And specifically about Leslie. I would love Leslie Sloan got off pretty pretty easily for what she did. Now we might get to see some stuff in the Jones versus Abel case because that's coming up, and there's talk about things getting unsealed. The judge asking about things that are still sealed, so we probably be getting a great unsealing there, and we may finally get to see the role that Leslie played in that. If not, um, maybe we get to see a little bit more here. But things like this give me hope that this is well documented. And if he was misportrayed, I'd like to see that get cleared up as well. I don't like to see anybody get falsely accused of things and mistreated and bullied. If just like with Wayfarer, all the stuff Blake said, I believed that at first too. A lot of us did. And what finally helped? We got to see the actual evidence because Justin also, and Jamie as well, we saw his timeline. That was very detailed. They documented. So it may end up being a situation like that where we all thought one thing, and then after seeing the documentation, we see that it might be something different. Okay, then what happens? She's still going on. She tells him, "This is your fault for getting us involved. It should be a lesson to you. Your conversations with Brian Friedman have nothing to do with Daily Mail. This is costing the company so much money to represent you." And then Daily Mail's efforts to control his legal representation soon expanded into efforts to control the manner and substance of his response to the subpoenas. Again, we'll get to see, hopefully, the documentation of. I love that. Fam, fries got to be hot. What's going on here? Yeah, exactly, Christina. It's hard because I don't know what to believe with him, so I really appreciate him having a paper trail. And that's to be expected. I understand that completely. I mean, my first video about the guy, I had a snake with two heads, and I put his head over each of those snake heads. I did not spare this man at all. I went off on him based on, but later when some stuff came out, I was like, wait a minute. Everything that I had seen was someone else's interpretation of his words. And we'd seen what happened to the Wayfarer parties from Blake. So I thought, why would I not give this person the same amount of understanding that I gave to them, who I didn't believe in the beginning? And I thought, because I had no idea who Justin Baldoni was, had no idea who Jamie Heath was. I'm like, oh, these creeps. I can't believe they did this. And look how that all turned out. So just keep that in mind too if you still have doubt. I'm not saying believe everything this guy says. I'm saying look at it from the same eyes that we looked at the Wayfarer case with. Then May through June, a conspiracy is born. Daily Mail and Leslie Sloan find a convenient solution to both of their problems. Wouldn't it have been beautiful if Leslie could have been in this lawsuit too? But she's kind of slick. She's kind of slick about what she says and does. She's not nice, but she can't be sued for not being nice. But I would have loved to have seen that, but I mean, at least maybe some of her will get exposed a little bit. So late May through early June, despite plaintiff's explicit objections, Daily Mail coordinated with Ms. Sloan's counsel to respond to plaintiff's subpoenas through a sworn declaration. This is important, guys. Understand what this is saying. We accused him of flip-flopping because we saw in the beginning, we liked him. He's like, oh, he's helping Wayfarer. We were like, oh, he's helping Wayfarer. And then we're like, wait, he's helping Blake. He's coordinating with Leslie. He's helping Leslie. Daily Mail coordinated with Leslie to respond to these subpoenas, rather than by permitting plaintiff to produce documents and testify at a deposition. So he gets blocked, and Daily Mail decides how the response is going to go. So the response, all of that, this is what we're going to talk about. Because when we thought he flip-flopped is when that statement came out. This is all leading up to that statement. This is how that statement was born. This is what he's going through. He's wanting to speak for himself. He's wanting his own counsel. He's not getting to do it, according to this lawsuit. Plaintiff repeatedly objected to the use of a sworn declaration in lieu of responding to the subpoenas through document production and deposition testimony. We already saw that back when he had the conversation in December, we saw those texts. He was willing to testify. We know that. Now all of a sudden he's being stopped. He was happy to testify about what Leslie Sloan said to him at the time. Daily Mail doesn't want that to happen, because if they allow it to happen, they're going to lose Leslie Sloan. Now, here's the line that I said earlier, that this line chafes me. It's still sitting here reading it to you today. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't like this line given the antics of Mr. Baldoni and his legal team. But if this happened to me, I don't know what I would say. Okay, so we have to be fair. We have to think about that, and we have to recognize if this stuff was done to him, he has every right to feel his feelings. And like I said, we don't know how his text messages were presented to Brian Friedman. We don't know that. I like Brian Friedman. You guys know that. I like Justin and Jamie. I like them as in I don't have any idea what they're actually like as people. I see what we all get to see. Never talk to any of them. But as I said earlier, we all make mistakes. We're all capable of making those mistakes. Like I said, I shredded James in the video, and then I later put out an apology. Things like this happen. They do. But so this part, I understand this part being really hard to swallow for those of us who are Wayfarer supporters. We don't like to hear stuff like this. We feel protective. But if this is what happened to him, he has every right to express himself in this lawsuit. And we'll get to the bottom of it. At some point, we'll get to the bottom of what actually happened. Plaintiff consistently asked to preserve his ability to provide truthful testimony pursuant to the lawful subpoenas. He wanted to get to answer on his own, and he never did. Gelf says, as I said on Bocce's stream with James text, content is sadly lacking, so true motivation is unknown. This is the exact point. You're so smart, Gelf. You're so smart to say that. You know, in the moment when we got mad, our emotions clouded everything. But we have to listen. We have to listen, let everybody tell their side, and see the actual evidence, see what it provides. Okay, let me read my notes. Putting ourselves in these shoes, who of us wouldn't feel the same, wouldn't feel some kind of way if our words were taken out of context and put in more than one filing, in more than one case, because it's in the California case, it comes back in the New York case, and it resulted in our whole life blowing up. He was offering his help, and all of this happened to him. I can't help but feel for the guy, and looking at the messages that took place, there's really no way to deny that this happened to him. Maybe it's hard for some to understand how a person can be pressured this way. I already talked about this, being similar to them. I think the rest of this, yeah, the rest of this I already said because I got ahead of myself like I always do when I don't look at my notes. But anyway, May through June, again, I think these specific dates are a signal that this is well documented and we may get to see it later. I put a star by it because this is another thing that shocks me that their in-house attorneys and the supervisors did. They pressured him to sign a declaration he believed was false or misleading. And this is what it all comes to. This is the declaration that we all thought he had flip-flopped when this hit the court filings. How did it come to be? Throughout the drafting process, plaintiff repeatedly identified statements in the proposed declaration that he believed were false, misleading, or unsupported by his own knowledge. He didn't get to write this himself. It was written for him, and he didn't get to change it. He's like, this is not true, or this is misleading, or this is unsupported by my knowledge. And it didn't happen. They didn't listen. They didn't heed what he said. On May 22nd, okay, now we have an exact date here. No question, there is something to prove this right here. Because there's no way that all this time later, he remembers that it was May 22nd, 2025. He objected to language stating that he regretted his actions because that language did not accurately reflect his views. So they're trying to have him say he regrets it. What does that mean? That means him admitting he did something wrong. He doesn't want to say that. On or about June 4th, again, we have a specific date. I'm telling you, there's some well-documented stuff. Plaintiff participated in a Zoom meeting with defendant Daily Mail's legal team. I wonder if that Zoom meeting exists, if the recording of that exists. Again, I don't know if it will be allowed, though, because it's attorney-client privilege. Again, without independent counsel present on his behalf. After counsel continued pressing for the disputed language despite plaintiff's objections, plaintiff again asserted that he would not agree to characterize his actions as something he regretted. Despite plaintiff's repeated objections, the word regret still appeared twice in the final declaration. All right, now we're going to come back to this labor law. Now, this time it is Section 740. This is the retaliatory action. So we're going to go through his causes of actions in another video. Otherwise, it's going to be just far too long. And we're already over an hour, and those need time. But what I want to say about this complaint, I feel like this is a very, very good complaint. This guy knows what he's doing, and he covered himself. He didn't give everything away. He gave enough, but he covered himself really, really well. I haven't gotten a chance to deep dive this guy, but this is not his first lawsuit of this nature. I'll tell you that much, because he hit all of the things that you need to prove this kind of thing. So first of all, there's protected activity. We learned a lot about that with the Blake case because it's the same kind of law, but this one is the New York law. Blake tried and failed to use California law. So, what was the protected activity? He objected to signing a sworn declaration containing statements that he believed were false or misleading. I have the word perjury here for a reason. Coercion. The complaint alleges that Daily Mail's lawyers and executives repeatedly told him to sign despite those objections, which is what? It is coercion. You need to sign it when your bosses and the in-house law team keeps telling you to do this. What else do you call it? He ultimately signed while writing that he was not completely comfortable doing so. Somewhere this writing exists. Mark my word that he was not comfortable signing this declaration. And that was a brilliant thing to do. Again, if you're being forced to do something, write it down, document it. Just like we have when Justin and Jamie had to write Blake's PGA letter, they also sent off notice. Wasn't it to who was it to? I forgot now, guys. You probably remember. But they put it in writing that they did not agree with that letter, that they felt that they had to write the letter. Do you guys remember? I'm not getting my words exactly right, but I'm sure you guys all remember what I'm talking about. They documented it just like he did, that we're being forced to do this basically. It was the PGA letter. Or are you talking about something else, Pam? Was it the Sony that they sent it to? Maybe, yeah, I think you're right. Yes, Gelf, I will be covering that. I will be covering that for sure. I've got so much catching up to do because I've just not been able to do anything. But except for read it. But yeah, I definitely want to cover that. I will be. I mean, it's Charles Babcock. I love his stuff. I just read his stuff for fun. He is such a good writer of these things. Okay, potentially unlawful conduct. This is important because for the New York labor law, in order to have a whistleblower lawsuit, they're not Pam, probably not going to be, but I was in China, and I don't want to get into it too much. And I was notified that my mom had to have emergency surgery, and it would be before I could get home. And it was life-altering situation. And so yeah, that was very, very difficult. And I'm the kind of person when I'm hit with something that's going to be difficult, I can't like really talk about it until I process it. Like if I say the words or if I write the words, it becomes real. And I'm not ready until I've processed it for it to be real. And you guys know I'm so emotional. And when I'm fighting those emotions, if I let myself feel other emotions, if I let myself feel, I feel all of it. So that's why I was like, I can't come on here because I love this time I spend with you guys. So many of you are so much like me, and you're so kind. And I was not in control of my emotions, processing all of that. Plus, I just really didn't have time. I wasn't home much at all. It was like madness, and yeah, I just couldn't do it till I got myself together a little bit better. But I appreciate so much, and I want to tell you all that. I appreciate so much, and if I didn't read every one of you guys' messages, I read everyone that came up. And I thank you guys so very much for that. It meant the world to me going through all that. It was some nights it would be like middle of the night. I would finally have a moment and I would go on there and just read your beautiful comments and many tears on Cassidy's pillow from you guys. happy tears, just from reading your kind words. So thank you guys so much for that. Um, but let's see. Here we are. So in New York's, in order for there to be like whistleblower, there has to have been an activity that went against a New York law. So he's very, the way he chose his words to put this all together is so nice. He doesn't just say, oh, James didn't want to sign this. He uses specific words like false. He objected to signing a sworn declaration containing statements that he believed were false or misleading. Well, now you're getting into breaking the law, perjury, stuff like that, right? So, and like he hit all of this stuff that you have to hit to qualify, because the motion to dismiss is coming. It's going to undermine everything. They're going to deny everything. They're going to demonize James. They're not going to take any of this blame, and they're going to say, oh, there's no um this doesn't have teeth, it needs to be dismissed. I mean, we got to be ready for it, because of course they're going to do that. Of course they're going to do that. They have to do that. But he gave us enough here, and gave them enough. Now they'll get to see the defense in a motion to dismiss and or the answer, and then they'll get to come with all of this, is what I'm predicting right now. We'll get to see more details of all of this, because it sounds like this guy he's got it all lined up. His dominoes are ready. Then we have, let's see, explicit notice to the employer. His independent lawyer, this is interesting too, sent Daily Mail a June 15th, again, a date, claim letter expressly identifying him as a protected whistleblower and warning that adverse employment action would constitute retaliation. And then we have the near immediate retaliation. If you remember also from Blake's lawsuit, one of the issues that made retaliation not be able to stick so well was the timing. And remember Judge Lyman and one of his twisty, gymnasticy ways of letting Blake keep that retaliation, as he used that whole thing about the contract. It was absolutely ridiculous. And I was one of my absolute just came on here raging about it, because it was ridiculous. Because when you don't have something that happens immediately after, the time period gets too far away, you can't say, oh, this was retaliation. But in this case, that's not a question. The very next day, what happens? His supervision. Now, we saw this guy got a $22,000 raise. He got praised for his work. Now, all of a sudden, there's supervision of his work, requiring his articles to undergo additional review. This is definitely a change in his work situation. That's another thing Blake didn't have. She was never able to point to, well, after I did this, then they started retaliating. They did this to me. They did that to me. She didn't have anything. The very next day, this guy's work environment changes drastically. What else happens? 10 days later, he gets fired. That is pretty immediate retaliation. And I want to say something here too. I've been scrolling through X and through Instagram and watching others report on this and reading comments and stuff like that. And one of the things that I've seen that people who are critical of him is they're like, oh, he didn't get fired for that. He got fired because a reporter shouldn't be doing this and this and this and this. It's because of his text messages. Think about this. When did Daily Mail become aware of these text messages? those text messages turned up in a lawsuit in December. So they became aware way back when we all did. December of 2025. Did they fire him in December or January or February? No. Did he have any discipline? Did he get supervised when those texts were released? Did he get supervised in December or January or February? No. He didn't get fired because of those texts. If he got fired because of those, it would have been back then. The discipline would have been back then. But when does it happen? June. 6 months later. When? When this letter comes out, a whistleblower. He's a whistleblower. When he hires his own attorney and stops letting them push him around. That's when the retaliation comes, and that's when he gets fired. No one can say it's because of his conduct, because of his text messages. The timing is way off. There was no discipline and there was no firing when the text messages came to light. So that's a very strong point for his case. Pretext evidence, the termination supposedly was for lack of integrity and poor judgment, yet the complaint says he had never previously been disciplined or accused of performance problems, and the termination followed immediately after his whistleblower notice. So you want to talk about this lack of integrity and poor judgment? Where's the pattern of that? Where is any evidence of him having shown this and had to have been talked to, disciplined, warned? Nothing. So yeah, this case looks really good in my opinion. And then it goes through a slurry, and these couple of pages, I feel like these are ones that made me think too that we're going to get a mountain of evidence, because we see look, and it's in quotes, so this exists somewhere, that he messaged Ms. Powell and Ms. Ritschel. I was super uneasy with how I was being gaslighted into thinking I was the one to blame. I have really no other option than to sign the declaration because Miss Sloan is really coming for me and wants to silence me. This is what he wrote when he was being forced to make that declaration. Was he doing this for Blake? Was he doing this for Leslie? Is that what that sounds like to you guys? Or does it sound like he's being forced to do this for their sakes? What else happens? June 5th, he learns, what does he learn? That if he signs this declaration, Leslie gets to withdraw the subpoena that's served upon plaintiff and the subpoena that's served upon Daily Mail. So this is why Daily Mail pushed for this, forced this. They made a deal with Leslie. Leslie's like, I'll withdraw the subpoena from him. I'll withdraw the subpoena from you. You get to quietly sneak off. Nobody gets to see your stuff in the lawsuit. It won't get filed in the lawsuit. Make this guy sign this and we're good. And so they do. So he doesn't get deposed. He doesn't, his stuff doesn't get handed in. He doesn't get to decide, okay, I'm giving you the whole context of all the messages and the whole conversation. He doesn't get to do that because of this. So you think he wanted to sign that? This guy wanted the whole conversation to show, to prove that it was taken out of context. And signing this declaration meant he didn't get to do that. He wanted to testify or at least be deposed. Signing this declaration meant he didn't get to do that. This declaration was not his idea. It was not something he wanted to do. Okay, let's see. This is what Daily Mail wanted, and this is what Leslie Sloan wanted. And then they also didn't want us to listen to him or believe in him. So then they end up shredding him when they're done with him so that we won't like him and we won't feel sorry for him and we won't listen to him. We won't hear his story. Okay, another thing that he objected to. So the first one was about regret. Now look at this one and tell me who he was still protecting by this one. Plaintiff also objected to language stating that he did not authorize Mr. Baldoni or his counsel to include his text messages in their filings, explaining what? That he could not truthfully state what had or had not been authorized. So they're telling him to say, you didn't authorize Brian Friedman to use those messages. He didn't want to say that. He said, I can't really say what I did or didn't authorize. He didn't want to say this about Brian Friedman, even though his face and his name had ended up in the first lawsuit and then that got redacted. Then the story in an incorrect way got portrayed again in the second lawsuit. Even after all of that, he did not want to turn on them and say this right there. But he didn't get to write his own statement. He didn't get to testify. So there's no chance to me that he is supporting Blake or Leslie or anybody by reading this. The other thing is, even though he's saying that the Wayfarer team misrepresented his words, they're not on this lawsuit. Not only that, when was this lawsuit filed? He started to do one months back, but he withdrew it. He waited until everything about that lawsuit was over. Not just with Blake, but even the New York Times. All over with, all done, so that none of this could be used by Blake against Wayfarer again. That's when he filed it. Okay. Because he could have, if he wanted to hurt Wayfarer, he really could have done that. Filed this sooner. Could have not included this part to let us all know that he hadn't authorized that. He would have been fine. Yeah, they used that without my permission. So even though he was hurt by the whole thing, he still did not want to throw them under the bus. Okay. When Miss Lobel insisted that plaintiff sign, he again refused to sign the declaration with language that he did not authorize publication of his text messages. Counsel nevertheless continued urging plaintiff to execute the declaration. He then emailed Miss Richelle and Miss Powell, I had to send this because I cannot sign something unless I am whatever that number is, percent. That afternoon, Miss Lobel entered the newsroom and hostilely asked plaintiff, have you signed the declaration? Why have you not signed it? You need to sign it. There's a court deadline. When plaintiff requested that Miss Davies review the declaration first, remember that's his boss that gave him the raise, Miss Lobel replied, why would Miss Davies need to see this? She knows nothing about this lawsuit. Plaintiff then texted Miss Powell, I literally could never work again. I don't think I'm going to sign it. My gut says no. I'm being yelled at for not signing it. Again, in quotes. What does that tell us? This exists. We're going to get to see this at some point. He documented all of this, and there's no question he didn't want to do this. Miss Richelle then instructed plaintiff, sign it. Miss Davies just asked that you sign it and get it all done. So now when everybody has turned on him, It's an et tu, Brute, then falls Caesar moment. Plaintiff responded, "This is so ridiculous. No one wants to understand or listen to why I don't want to do it." But ultimately, he had to. So Daily Mail abandoned plaintiff while publicly exploiting the declaration, and plaintiff engaged in further protected whistleblower activity. So they screwed him a second time. Once they got him to sign it, then they hung him out to dry, made him look bad. Okay, then on June 5th, approximately, now we have a time, 3:30 p.m., after hours of escalating pressure from defendant, Daily Mail's legal and editorial leadership, plaintiff reluctantly signed. How many times have we seen cases that where people have been arrested and the police just keep on and on and on and end up getting a false confession out of them? This this kind of coercion is very, very real. Immediately before signing, plaintiff wrote, this is amazing that he did this too. Before he signed it, he wrote, "I don't feel completely comfortable in doing this," on a piece of paper, and placed it next to the declaration before executing it. He then showed both the note and the executed declarations to Miss Cooper. That's an excellent point. The police are allowed to lie to you. Your lawyer is not. Yep. The stuff that happened to him is just awful. Okay. And then they state plain and clear, 59, plaintiff's objection to signing a declaration under coercion amounted to protected whistleblower activity. And we got to keep in mind what they said earlier too, that he did not feel was truthful, because now we get into breaking a law which is required for a whistleblower lawsuit. June 2025, another subpoena. While taking medical leave, James receives a new subpoena from Brian Friedman. So now Wayfarer team is like, wait, we need your stuff. Plaintiff advised Daily Mail that he didn't want to object to the subpoena. He wanted to provide deposition testimony. So they've already made him sign the thing, but he's like, okay, I got a new subpoena now. I want to testify. Nevertheless, defendant Daily Mail's counsel prepared and filed objections on plaintiff's behalf over plaintiff's express wishes, continuing defendant Daily Mail's pattern of overriding plaintiff's decisions regarding his own legal representation and participation in the federal litigation. So they stopped him again. Then on June 15th, Mr. Garagos, and I think a lot of you know him, Mark Garagos, from the community. He's made several videos about it. He's a good friend of Brian Friedman, actually, and they've discussed the case together in YouTube videos. He's also appeared with Megyn Kelly, explaining stuff about the case with her. So he sends on June 15th, and this is a big day, this claim letter notifying the company that plaintiff was a protected whistleblower under New York law and that any adverse employment action taken against him would constitute unlawful retaliation. Nevertheless, these people ain't so bright. They begin to retaliate. And we saw, I had kind of outlined it on that one slide because I was trying to show all the elements are here. We see his work materially changed immediately the very next day. He starts being supervised and evaluated. And that required that everything that he submitted be reviewed and approved by Mr. Ellis and the attorneys. And then, is that 9 days later? Wait, was it the 15th? Yeah. On June 26th, he gets fired. So Mr. Ellis leaves him a voicemail requesting a call. James, by this time, must have been like absolutely beside himself. So he responds via an email. He wants to clear this up. First, says, I want to formally express again in writing, this is great, that any adverse employment action taken against me at this point would be retaliatory as I have an active and ongoing whistleblower complaint. Hopefully, we get to see that whistleblower complaint. Um, Nevertheless, Mr. Ellis responded to the email terminating plaintiff, effective immediately. Put it in an email. You have repeatedly demonstrated a lack of integrity and poor judgment, and we therefore cannot rely on you as a reporter going forward. This is nuts. These people, they need some better lawyers. That's for certain. But wow, it makes for a great lawsuit. Daily Mail's stated reason was pretext. Plaintiff was never counseled for any performance-related issues, let alone accused of lacking integrity and exercising poor judgment prior to engaging in protected whistleblower activity, rejecting Mr. Ellis's sexual advance, and requesting a reasonable accommodation. Now we have something more up to date. This is really interesting. I learned a little bit about this today. April 11th through the 15th of this year, more retaliation. So Miss Lively and Mr. Baldoni's legal teams filed a joint pre-trial order containing their prospective trial witness lists, wherein Miss Lively named plaintiff. Now, we don't know why she named him, if it was just for our sakes, or if it was meant to intimidate, because this would be before the settlement, to intimidate Wayfarer somehow, like what her motives were behind that. But shortly on or about April 15th, Daily Mail removed all references to plaintiff from its portfolio, which included roughly 500 articles and exclusives, as well as any associated links to his own portfolio, effectively eliminated any professional attribution of plaintiff, and destroyed the public record of his work of the past 3.5 years. That's kind of cruel, to be honest. 3.5 years of work over about 500 articles and exclusives, and they just erase it completely. Now, let's talk about that. On April 14th, he must have continued to document everything. The profile was still active. If you go in the Wayback Machine, it was still there. We see his whole bio. So even though everything had happened, this was still possible with the Wayback Machine to get a hold of. Now, this is my first time looking this up. I've heard of it, but I've never done any research on it. So I hope I got this all right. So when you search, you see these blue dots on the calendar. So these have a different meaning. So blue is a good result. The page was saved successfully without errors. So it was operating up until then. And now this larger and bluer dot means there was more activity happening on that day. So somebody was doing something on April the 14th, and it was all still there. Notice green. Green is a redirect. It is different than a 404 not found. It is different than a server error or a bad gateway. This is a redirect. When you click on it, you get sent somewhere else. Somebody, from what I understand, has to physically or manually do that. Somebody changed. They didn't just delete and, okay, the page isn't here anymore. They changed where you get sent so that even on the Wayback Machine, you can't find this stuff, if I understand this correctly. Look here, June 3rd, green, redirects. So sometime in between him being named as a potential witness and June 3rd, it was gone. The next dot here was a green dot, and it was redirected. So who could redirect Daily Mail's links? Daily Mail. All right. Now, this I want to say, and I talked about this a little bit earlier about inconsistencies. So I understand, and you guys have a right to feel what you feel, or if you've seen inconsistencies that I've missed, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to say you can't say that or feel that or believe that. You're free to feel and believe how you want to. But as I said earlier, I know that the Blake bots have been very, very busy. I saw some of you guys posting about it on X, and on Instagram, that we all think it's probably because of the Jones versus Abel lawsuit coming up. It's about to be unsealed. Um, but it could be something else. I know there was some Taylor Swift stuff brought up. They're getting braced for something. We always know when they get more active that they're getting ready for something. So, also, James has been getting some criticism as well. Some of it could be legit people who think he's a bad guy. Um, but if you're interested, I don't want to argue about it with anybody. You guys can have your opinion. I have my opinion, and that's changing through the course of all this the more I read. But if there is something that you felt like was inconsistent, or you have honest questions about it, please put it in the comments and we'll look into that together. We'll get down to the bottom of it because I really want to know. I really want to know like what really happened here. But was it an inconsistency based on someone else portraying what James said? Or was it actually James' words that were inconsistent? That's the big question, I think. So then the rest of it, of the lawsuit, or yeah, the complaint, I think it's, yeah, section 78 to 84 before we get to the causes of action. And like I said, we'll do the causes of action separately. The one thing I want to bring out about that is he's making and again, really well written. This attorney knows very well what has to go there. You have to have this causation language, this but for. And I know you guys have heard um I'm not actually Golden and Omar and Little Girl Attorney explain this but for language. Like I said, it's causation. This wouldn't have happened but for he became a whistleblower. So the statement, I will say the statement is not accurate that I have seen floating around, oh, he was fired for his conduct. Not so, because of the time span. It was over 6 months apart between his text becoming public and him getting fired. And it was very, very close to Mark Garagos saying whistleblower. So the causation is not those text messages. If that really was it, he would have been disciplined and fired much earlier. Chicken. You guys are amazing. I missed you so much. How to make Cassidy laugh on the golf course. Chicken butt for. Okay. So, they didn't fire him over the text messages. They fired him after he hired his own attorney and filed the whistleblower statement. Wait, Gloria, what am I reading? What am I reading? They begged their way onto doomsday. They do show up in the end? Did that air already? Is that out already? I'm so out of it. I'm way behind on what's happening in the world. They show up in the end. Is it just a cameo? What is it? Oof. Hugh and Ryan Reynolds, she says, begged their way into it. I knew they were begging their way into it. How long is their part? Hopefully it's really short and stupid. Ugh. I hate them so much. Oh, it's not out until December 18th. Thank you, Jesse. All right, guys. So I told you I would save some time at the end for if you had any questions. Now is your chance. Sorry, I didn't get to read much. Yes, they are, Kenny. Is that confirmed, Gloria? Oof. Maybe if they keep getting a lot of hate for it, they'll cut them. Yeah, there are like 28 characters. Ugh, that's terrible news. Who is the judge in this case? So this is in New York State Court. I didn't notice if there is a judge. I don't know if there's a judge assigned yet. I'll have to go back and look. But we should be finding out soon. They'll have all the scheduling order and all of that set up. That'll get done really, really quickly. But I don't know who it is at the moment. Before the next time I talk about it, I'll try to find that information for you. But it's a state court, so it's not a chance that it will be Lyman. That's the good news. It's not federal. Yeah, he was apparently fired. Oh, that's a good question, Roses Wild. Did the Daily Mail make James do all three declarations or just one? Because I felt like all three of his declarations contradicted each other. Thank you for saying. Let me write that down. I want to go through and get them. If anybody knows the dates of those, probably not off the top of your head, right? Okay. Okay. JC says, I will not be watching Avengers Doomsday because I have principles and I will not ever watch anything to do with Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, or Hugh Jackman. Jessica Leezy. I love your post, Jessica Leezy. Day 69 of boycotting Ryan Reynolds. You were just going to ask Pam. It's in the press. Okay. Ugh. So is it two different movies? I thought it was just one. I'm so out of not a big superhero fan. Okay, not out till December. Oh, sorry guys, getting sleepy now. Pam says the great unsealing may affect the numbers at box office. Yeah, they need to think about that. With because the great unsealing and the Jones versus Abel is coming between now and then. Rosa says, I actually heard James was fired for starting a fire at the workplace. What? I hadn't heard that one. Let me write that down and I'll start investigating. And you guys investigate too, because there are some people in this community that can find just about anything. You guys are all amazing. The problem is the Yo Bros who support Ryan Reynolds because he's a disgusting character in a costume. He's also trying to weasel his way into Spider-Man. Ugh. I hope Jake, what is it, Gyllenhaal? I saw the conversation he had with the new Spider-Man guy. Oh, you know what? I was I was in Shanghai. Tom Holland, right? Tom Holland and Zendaya, they were in Shanghai when I was. We were at different malls on that day. They were there to promote Spider-Man there in China, and he got really hot because it was so hot there. And he went into a mall and bought shorts, and like the store sold out of the shorts that he bought in that day because of it. But we were just in the wrong mall. I could have seen them. That's so cool. Ugh, that's what he's gonna do. He's just gonna keep, just like how he got into Deadpool in the first place. He's gonna keep doing that stuff, like him showing up in denim. I didn't get to talk about all of that. That was sickening. Dry humping people and the fans. Those pictures. Did you guys see that with his leg up on someone and his crotch right on their hip? He's so gross. And then gonna make all these accusations about Justin and Jamie. Oh, Dune 3 comes out the same day as Doomsday. Well, that's a big deal. A lot of people are into Dune. Thanks for that, Jesse. Yes. Jessica Lizzie says, I'll support the good Ryan, aka Ryan Gosling. Absolutely. Hail Mary was so good. I watched it on the plane and then I came home and made my husband watch it with me again at home. And it's so good. It's so cute. That's what I told him because everything was so stressful at that time. And like all I was doing was crying. And I'm like, this is such a feel-good movie. It's clean, it's sweet, it's funny, it's wholesome. I just loved it so much. Christina, I'm not an investigator. I play a supporting role. I like to be devil's advocate, but I know it annoys people sometimes. Christina, you're amazing. You're so professional. I know. I'm not a big fan of superhero movies, but I have watched the Avengers movies. I think because my husband likes them. I think we've seen them all in the theater. This will be my first one to not. That's a shame. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. was coming back for it. I did watch the Iron Man movies too. I like him. I like a good life turnaround success story. And he is. Yes, Kenny. He has to weasel his way into something because he can't come up with any of his own ideas or movies exactly. He has to ride the coattails of others. Isn't that the truth? Him and Blake both pretend that they create and produce and direct, and they're just stealing other people's work. How dare she say she produced all that when he had absolutely everything set up. Getting on set and bossing people around when you're literally there just to say your lines is not the same thing as producing the movie and doing all the work. The work was all set up. She would arrive on the set late when everything was already there. Vision Quest is coming too. I don't even know what that is. So three movies? I wondered, Khaleesi, Did he have someone else dress up like that? Oh my goodness. God forbid. Gloria says, "I hope Tom Holland puts Ryan Reynolds on read and never responds. Can you imagine if the two sycophants get even close to Tim and Zendaya? Tom and Zendaya? They're like the it couple right now. Absolutely, those are the kind of people they'd wanna be with. But I hope that, Matt Damon has a little chat with them about what happened to him from taking their messages. Interesting, Jesse. Did you know Ladypool wasn't created until after Blake was cast into Green Lantern? I don't think Rob made it for Gossip Girl, lol. He made it because Ryan probably knew it would woo his new target. Interesting. The plot thickens. Everything they do is calculated. There's no way that that guy just randomly said, I'm going to make it like Blake. Some cable girls show, girls high school level show. Yeah, I think so too. I hope so. Christina says, I think Tim, and am I saying, is it Tom or Tim? Am I getting it wrong? Are way too smart. Yes, please. I hope they know what losers they are and won't give them time of day. If Ryan gets into Spider-Man, he'll try to rewrite the script. Yep. And I don't want to go too long, but there was a an episode that I actually wrote when I was in China because I took pictures. I was at the Disney store. I didn't have time to go to Disneyland there, but there's a big Marvel section there in the Shanghai Disney store, and it's big and it's beautiful. Guess who's not there? Deadpool. Spider-Man, Iron Man, everybody else is there, but no Deadpool. And so I looked it up, and it turns out that it's banned from being in the stores because it's so filthy. They're like, this is not for children. And so even in the States, you can only buy Deadpool merch in the Marvel section. I think it's the Hollywood Studios park. And it's a store that's like geared towards adults. It's not in with the kid stuff anywhere in the park. And that is a big deal. I did all kinds of research for a standalone episode I wanted to do, just a short, to talk about that, like all of the ways that Ryan Reynolds is not all that, and that hopefully Disney and Marvel have come to see. Because, yeah, the movie grossed over $1 billion. But then we found out when that information was released in the UK that with that tax break stuff, that the budget was so overinflated that in fact it wasn't very much profit for them at all. And then you add to that for the other guys like Iron Man. Now, Robert Downey Jr. made some serious money and Iron Man made some serious money. It's not about box office. It's about box office compared to budget, whether or not something is worth it. And Ryan inflated that budget so badly that it made it not that profitable. Then they had to defend, Marvel had to defend themselves in this lawsuit. They had to file the motions to quash the subpoenas that they were given. You know that there was some pretty big old law bills accrued from all of that, because you know they had to meet, they had to talk about it, they had to go over what are we potentially going to lose, what's possibly in all of this, and then file those motions to quash. So that costs some money, comes out of that budget. What else? Merchandise. Merchandise is huge. Spider-Man earns I can't remember how much. I really need to make that episode. It's billions, or at least over a billion annually from merchandise. I might be getting that wrong. Wait, retract that until I go over my notes again. It was a shocking amount of money, but that might have been total. But Spider-Man, they aim towards kids. There's like Spidey cartoons on Disney Channel, and so there's all kinds of Spidey merchandise that just makes so the movies make money, but then they keep making money year after year after year after year, huge amounts of money from the merchandise that Deadpool can't because it's so vile. So they had like their one chance was the movie. And then he blew the budget up so bad that the profit wasn't that high. And now it's so vile that there can't be merch except for very limited stores. I think there's something online, and then there's the couple of stores that are in the or the one store that's in the park in the Marvel section, and it's for adults. And who are people buying the most for at Disney World? They're buying for kids. So if you can sell this stuff to kids, that's where the real money is. So all of this, oh, Ryan's so clever. Ryan earned so much money. Ryan made so much money for Disney. No, he didn't. So yeah, I've got to go through my notes because I really did a deep dive about that. That it's another way that Ryan ruined their money. Yes. Agreed, Gloria. He uses Deadpool as an excuse to be inappropriate and do nasty things. Because Deadpool is a goofy character in the comics, but we know Blake and Ryan don't read source material. Yeah, I wonder. I don't know if I've ever read a comic book in my life, but I wonder is he I mean, I know he's not a nice guy and that he is gross and inappropriate, but is he as bad as Ryan portrays him? Does anybody know? When do you think Lyman will rule on the attorney's fees? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he's got to be, I don't know. Seeing this stuff in Texas, I hope Texas rules on it before he does. You shut off Hail Mary in the first 20 minutes? Oh, I loved it so much. It's kind of long. Kenny says, I still haven't heard anything about his Hollywood North studio project that has been at a standstill since announced. Yeah, Blake's has been absolute. Her IMDb is dead, and his is mostly dead. They never even bought the land for it. I wonder how many promises he made on that. Is that the thing he was building in Canada? I forgot about that. I remember hearing about that from that couple with the Deadpool dog that that they seem to have taken a lot of her computer graphic work. I need to get back and finish her story too. But they said that he selected a road that was the name of something. I can't remember the details of that either. Oh, you guys, I'm tired and forgetting everything. Really? Jessica Lizzie said the short didn't sound like Ryan in the denim, the gray pool thing. All right, guys, we've gone over 2 hours now. I should call it, but thank you guys so much. Thanks for coming and chatting with me and spending time with me tonight. And she tried to get the role of Mystique. That's hilarious, Gloria. I'm just doing a quick scan. Yes, they do. Merch is huge and they can't do it. So, I mean, how brilliant and how much of a moneymaker is he, truthfully? Roses Wild says, I think Lyman will rule after the Stephanie Jones trial. That would be nice if I hope he takes his time and hears more about the story. I think a lot of stuff he did too fast. Aw, thank you. Thank you guys. You made it easy. I was nervous. I was afraid I couldn't do it, but you guys made it easy. I was happy to be here with you guys, and that overruled all the negative stuff. So thank you guys so much. And let me know seriously about your comments. I want the truth. That's all I'm interested in is the truth of this. After being fooled by Blake and thinking poorly of those people, the Wayfarer people, and then finding it out, I learned a lesson. Wait and hear it all out. But thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful Monday night. It is Monday, right? Trying to keep track of the days is rough. And I'm gonna try my best. I don't have as much free time as I used to anymore. But I have a backlog of some of the stuff I wrote, some of it I even recorded. And it all just got stalled. So I'll do my best to try to catch up. I definitely want to cover the Jed Wallace stuff too, and the Jones versus Abel stuff coming up soon. But thank you guys so much. To steal Omar's line, I love you all. Last week you forgot Tuesday. Yeah. Yes. That's the one thing from this I really, really want revealed is Leslie Sloan. Because like I said, she got away with a little too much, in my opinion, for having been the cause of all of Van Zandt and getting all this to Blake in the first place. She got off too easy. So I hope this lawsuit reveals stuff about her. Anyway, see you guys soon. Thank you, Christina.